Bass Case 041 Monk. Monk's Rules. The last 4 episodes were John Cage's rules for teachers and students. Now, almost from the same period, likely the 1960s, here's Theolonious Monk's advice. For those not in the know, Theolonious Monk was a great composer and jazz pianist. And I lead with composer first because I, like a lot of jazz musicians, know and play a lot of his music. Straight Note Chaser, it's an F blues, it's in my solo set. Blue Monk, it's a B flat blues, it makes appearances in my solo set too. Check those out. Both those heads fit on the bass, both electric and double bass, beautifully. I mean, I don't know how it does that. A lot of great heads do, they fit on the bass beautifully. But what I've read about Monk, along with being a very committed musician, is that he was a great teacher. Charlie Rouse was a tenor saxophonist who played with him for about 10 years, I think from 1959 to 1970. And I believe that he was the one that mentioned, and there may have been others that mentioned it too, that Monk taught the tunes by ear rather than writing them out on notation. He'd teach them, and it took a while. But I've seen recording sessions, videos of recording sessions with Theolonious Monk, and I've seen live performances, and there's no music stands inside, so those guys had learned the tunes, and they had learned his tunes, and he only played his music. And that alone means a lot to me. I mean, I've talked about this on a previous episode, how we need to learn music instead of reading sheets all the time. You just know the tunes better. You know the chord changes better when you learn them by ear. I love playing sets where I don't have to have a music stand in front of my bass, where I can just play and listen, and everything works better. It's more natural. And how you learn it, whether it's off a recording or someone playing the head and changes for you and you picking them up, it's harder work, but you get faster at it, and it drives you to learning them. And then you really know them. You won't forget them. I'm digressing again. You'll find Monk's handwritten list on the internet relatively easy, and I'll put a link to it on my YouTube channel. It's handwritten by Steve Lacy. That's the story that I've heard anyway, that the saxophonist Steve Lacy overheard Monk giving some advice to another musician, and Steve started writing it down, and it's been passed around for decades. They're not numbered. The first one, just because you're not a drummer doesn't mean that you don't have to keep time. Man, how true. Something you've heard me mention, and something that my students hear me mentioning all the time, is that you can't lean on the drummer. Sometimes the drummer doesn't show up for rehearsals over here. It happens. To me, it's not a big deal, but it alarms some of my players. Oh, yeah, he's not here. The drummer's not here. It should, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't. It should alarm you if your time and clock are not together. That would be alarming. But it shouldn't, because you need to be working that stuff out without a drummer. I got called for a country club gig once with a player I hadn't played with before. On the phone, he mentioned trio. And naturally, I thought bass, drums, and piano, right? I showed up early as usual, and I see a tenor player warming up, and I'm like, And then it started taking me a while before I realized that there was no drummer, that the trio was sax, piano, and bass, and that I was the drummer and the bass player both at one time. And I still remember how it felt for the first couple of tunes. It was like I was walking on a mattress. And then I settled in, and it was good for me because there was no backing out of it, right? There was no complaining. And I got called back, which means a lot went okay. It probably went okay. And it should. You should be able to play without a drummer. You should be able to be a timekeeper back there. And you should train yourself with the metronome. Check out my episode on 60, right? And when you play heads or walking lines without a drummer, those should be there. You should be comfortable in playing time. It's your job as a bass player. It's your job as a musician. So yeah, it does mean you have to play in time. Here's the second rule. Pat your foot and sing the melody in your head when you play. I do this all the time. Ba ba da 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 do dee da 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 do dee dum ba da da dum ba 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 dee boo dum ba ba da ba da ba da dee Then you know the tune and you know the form, right? You've got to do that stuff. You've got to be integrated into the music. That's what he's trying to tell you. You should know the head. You should be able to sing the head while you're playing bass lines. It doesn't matter if you're ever going to sing it in front of people. It should be playing in your head. You've got to be integrated into the music like that. You've got to know the form that way. You're playing. Your bass lines, your solos will reflect the tune and the form if you have integrated that. And you can do this without your instrument, right? You just sing, play. Or sometimes I just go C minor, C minor, F minor, F minor, D half diminished, G7 flat 9, C minor, C minor, bridge, E flat minor, A flat, D flat, and so on. And you know you're doing it, and you got to do it in time. This helps. It really does. You should know the melody and the changes that well. And for a bass player, it helps. It's not enough just to know the changes. I got to hear that melody popping around in my back of my head. We have to be absorbed into the music. That's where knowing the head and singing it in your head helps. Third rule, make the drummer sound good. Now, this goes back to the first one. You've got to make the drummer sound good. You have to keep the time. If you're leaning on him, you're not making him sound good. He's having to do your work. When you're swinging bass lines in good time, you and the drummer are going to sound good together. That's what you want. You want to work together. You don't want to lean on him and say, well, I got to have time. Make the drummer sound good, and the drummer will make you sound good. I remember one time a musician came out to one of our rehearsals when I was in college, and he came back there and talked to us, me and the drummer. He says to me, watch your drummer's ride cymbal. And he says, when that stick is bouncing off the ride cymbal in quarter notes, he goes, hear your bass line against that. And he told the same thing to the drummer, but in reverse, and it made perfect sense to me that you have to lock in. You have to pay attention to what the drummer is playing and have good time, good clock, right? Built in. It's magical sounding too. And if the drummer is behind you musically, meaning not as experienced, right? It's even more important. You've got to help it out. Make this person sound good. Lay time down. Don't wait. Don't feel. Just lay the line down some good time and look at him or her. You'll be highly regarded. This is his fourth rule. I'm going to go a little out of order. You've got to dig it to dig it. You dig? You don't like the tune? You don't like blue bossa? Too bad. Find a way to like it. We're playing music. We're not there to be music critics. I can't think of how many times I've been on gigs and players make a face or something. They don't want to do blue bossa, or they don't want to do a blues, or they don't want to do autumn leaves. It's too easy. Too easy. I don't think so. Find a way to make it interesting. Blue bossa, J.J. Johnson thought it was interesting. He thought it was a good tune. Listen to his album Quintergy with Rufus Reed on bass. Man, they sound good. They make that tune sound really good. On a so-called easy tune, it's not easy. It's just not stupid difficult. You've got to be emotionally involved with the music. You don't like listening to it? Is that what you mean? This is like, I think I might have touched a nerve with myself here. This is a big deal with me when people say they don't like certain tunes. They don't want to play them. Find a way to like them. We're playing it, and other people are listening to it, and other people are playing it, so you don't have a choice. They like it. Somebody likes it. I've heard this too many times about numerous tunes for it to make any sense to me. You've got to go play this. Someone might be thinking they're above something. Don't do that. Don't be a snob. And if you're going to tell yourself you don't really like that tune, or it's too easy, find a way to make it interesting to you. Find a way to play it. I like this rule. Stop playing all those weird notes and play the melody. Remember? Don't try to play out stuff. Don't try to play stuff that you don't know what it's supposed to sound like. Just play the melody. If you're having some problems, go back to the melody. No, this is just for bass players. Play the melody when you're called to solo. You ever think that's being done? I saw Lynn Seaton do it one night in a quartet setting. They were playing You Don't Know What Love Is. He bowed the melody in thumb position when it came time for a solo, and I was transfixed. Everything stopped. Why not? The melody is beautiful. It had already been played by the alto player at the beginning, and it had been 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes ago, if not longer. And this was at the end of the solo, so there it was again, but in a different context, arco bass. Try doing that. You can email me at phil@basscase.co. I'll talk to you soon.